My relationship with music in 2020 has been pretty unique to say the least. A lot of my time in the past where I listened to music was either in driving around places or sitting at my office job for 8 hours a day. And I didn't have any of that this year because I work from home, baby. On a more serious note, it was kind of disappointing to not hear a lot of music in, bars or clubs or from just me exploring music while driving and playing these long playlists. And it was more or rather me just kind of relaxing at home. But in a weird sense, that still made me explore more. I had more time on my phone where I was just, messing around and trying to find new stuff. And I was fortunate enough that this year had some really good music to actually calm my nerves and just keep me sane during this time. For this list, I'm really just giving the top 10 albums that meant the most to me and I enjoyed most this year. And no restrictions on if it's like an EP or whatever. It's if it's in a cohesive unit with more than, I don't know, 6 or 7 songs, then it's an album to me. And the only exception here is I'm not going to play any like OSTs or like soundtracks or anything. It has to be more of like a artist's album made for just that's its own product. Quick honorable mention goes out to Kid Cudi's Man on the Moon 3. Now, it's really nice to see that Kid Cudi has kind of come back in a strong way, especially with a lot of his music recently, just hitting the stride that he had in, the late 2000s. Now, the reason this didn't crack my top 10 list was one, because it is just too new. It came out, like a week ago in like mid-December, and it just doesn't have enough time to resonate with me to actually have that kind of impact that some of these other albums have. And number two, despite me enjoying this album as a whole, I do feel like the first half is pretty weak and then the second half is where it hits its stride. So it is a bit of a mixed bag, and especially for an album that's, 20 or so songs, when 10 songs are things I just don't completely enjoy, it kind of makes it tough to put it in the top 10 list. At number 10, we have Juice WRLD's Legends Never Die. Now, Legends Never Die isn't the most consistent album on this list, but what it does bring is a lot of emotion, a lot of heart, and a good variety of kind of genres playing in this album. I'm not gonna lie, the post-mortem status of this album definitely resonates a lot of the emotional connection with me in this album, and a lot of the themes of mental health and anxiety and going through all that kind of struggle really struck a personal chord with me. As I mentioned before, I do appreciate the range of this album. Some personal favorites of the album, just Conversation, Man of the Year, and Come and Go. They're like from rap to like punk to like EDM. Out of the 2015 surge in SoundCloud's melodic trap rap with Lil Uzi and X and people of those sort, Juice WRLD was really my favorite, and it really sucks to know that this is going to be his last complete album that we're ever going to get. At number 10, we have Pvris with Use Me. Pvris isn't the most popular group on this list, but they truly are one of my favorite bands of all time. I'm very surprised if that changed at any time. Shout out to my sister for introducing me to them and bringing me to all those fun concerts over the years. Something that, I don't know, will we ever be able to go to concerts again? Pvris just has a unique, somber sound that sounds kind of like out of plane, and that sound changes with each album they come out with. Admittedly, I don't think this is their best album, but it still has a lot of the emotional, erratic energy to it that I expect to know from Pvris. The singles that dropped before the album came out were probably the better songs and my personal favorites of the album, and those including Dead Weight and Hallucinations. But for the deluxe edition, they did have one additional song, Thank You, which I really think is one of my favorites of the album as well. Overall, solid Pvris album. If you haven't listened to them before, please do. I'm not sure if this is their best album to start off with, but I can at least admit that there's a lot of good singles off this album. At number 8, we have Oliver Tree, Ugly is Beautiful. Oliver Tree started as a more comedic, satirical rapper who had a lot of focus on his just quirkiness and weirdness, with surprisingly hard alternative style raps with decent lyrics. That really just contrasted with his appearance and his outward, demeanor. But with this album, Oliver Tree really showed a deep emotional side without giving up that slick production and those catchy choruses. The messages and anecdotes of this album of just feeling inadequate, just getting taken advantage of, feeling like you're not good enough, and just in general depression as a whole, they really juxtaposed with the beats and the lyrics that you kind of heard. So while you were getting something that sounded super exciting and upbeat, with the message and content of that was really deep and honestly emotional. And you really understand that like Oliver Tree really put a personal connection into everything he was writing. Even though a lot of these songs came out like, I don't know, months or years before the album actually dropped, my personal favorites are probably still What Hurt, Let Me Down, and Bury Me Alive. Overall, this album surprised me, not because of how catchy and fun and easy to listen to all of it was, but for how thematic and meaningful it actually ended up being. At number 7, we have Bad Bunny with YHLQMDLG, or Yo hago lo que me te Growing up, I listened to a lot of like reggaeton in order to get in touch with my Puerto Rican side. But I've really fell off hard in the last, 5, maybe even more years. And coming into this album, knowing that Bad Bunny is pretty much the top, of the genre right now, it really made me happy to see kind of how it's evolved in many ways and stayed the same in the core ways that make reggaeton like its own unique genre. There's a big mix of sounds in this album and a good mix of singing and rapping. Now, like the trap elements from modern day like rap and what's popular are obviously transparent here, but you get a lot of like tropical kind of themes, a lot of EDM inspired stuff, and a lot of like R&B, which is something that's unique to me in reggaeton, where you used to just get the same kind of like Daddy Yankee beat on every single Gasolina kind of like track. And genuinely, Bad Bunny has like a really good voice. It's like a really interesting cadence to how he sings. And with this album, you can just cherry pick any song. And the beauty is that you could play that at a party, or you can just kind of play it chilling at home. And it's a great vibe for either of those. At number 6, we have Bring Me the Horizon with Post-Survival Human Horror. I fucked that up. Post-Human Survival Horror. Bring Me the Horizon in 2020. Yeah. That's the thing. The album is so energetic and fun, yet it gives you time to breathe. Now, Bring Me the Horizon isn't as edgy as they were in the 2000s, which isn't a bad thing that they're like that. And those kind of metalcore influences are still there. But over the last decade or so, their sound has really been evolving into incorporating a lot more synth and EDM, some alternative kind of stuff. And I don't know, I think it's been kind of for the better in order to keep up with the times, but also have a really interesting sound to them now. Parasite Eve, Obey, One by One, and definitely Kingslayer are my favorites of the albums. And 3 of those have like amazing features, which was a really big strength in this album that only had, 11 songs? This is probably one of the more like guilty pleasure albums on the list, but it's just so much fun and energetic, and it just kind of brings back like an emo side that I never really had when I was growing up. Also, did y'all know they were British? I don't know, maybe I'm fucking stupid, but like I just never knew that, and I feel like that's something I should have known. At number 5, we have Run the Jewels with Run the Jewels 4. I realized like you can't even see me do the 4. It's my hands over here. When Run the Jewels drops an album, you can expect hard beats, great flow, and relevant and poignant political commentary on stuff that's happening right now, and that's exactly what we got here. The album dropped at the height of the BLM and civil unrest protests and really spoke volumes about what was going on. This album dropped, I think the night after Killer Mike gave his really emotional speech in my hometown of Atlanta after a lot of the riots and everything destroyed the city, and it felt very real. The messages of this album will be important just for years to come, but I think it's really important to see an album like this that really talks on the huge issues and the problems and the depressing state of 2020, honestly. And I hope it will become some kind of history or look into what this year was really like and a lot of the issues that still, unfortunately, persist in today's society. Personal favorites are Walking the Snow, Goonies vs. E.T., and Out of Sight. And either way, just as a whole cohesive unit of an album, LP and Killer Mike just drop something that's just gold, like they do with every single one of their self-titled albums. And I think this might be one of their most important ones yet. At number 4, we have Glass Animals with Dreamland. Now, I think I might be late to the Glass Animals hype train. I just every Spotify playlist I would put on that's just kind of like my personal like chill kind of playlist. Like I feel like they had a song on, and I don't know if I'm late to the game or this is just the year they blew up, but I'm glad I found them. Glass Animals just have a sound that I just really fucking love. It's a lot of the album is kind of sameish, but that's okay because that's probably what I would have preferred. They're melodic, sleepy, surreal kind of sound, and they're distorted and out of this realm kind of singing. Really just is something you can lie down to and just let your anxiety flow out of you. Heat Waves, Tangerine, and It's Also Incredibly Loud are probably the most popular songs on this album, and I admittedly they do probably stand alone the strongest, but this is definitely an album that I feel like you should just start from the beginning and just relax and listen to for like an hour. It just feels very cohesive and it feels stronger as a complete unit. At number 3, we have Nectar from Joji. Now, when I first heard this album, I really didn't like it at all. The songs weren't doing it for me, and I was just extremely disappointed. And the thing is, Joji's one of my favorite artists because he's able to capture the essence and soul and heart of lo-fi while having these amazing vocals to back it up. And then the same thing happened to me that happens with so many of my favorite albums. It grew on me. The experimentation Joji did with the sounds and his singing, the influxes in his voice and everything, it didn't work at first, but in subsequent listens, I really kind of got what he was going for, and then it kind of connected. It just clicked. I'll admit that the lyrics are pretty melodramatic and they're not the best, but I'll give it a pass because I think the emotional resonance and response that I got from this album came a lot from how it was presented. So, yeah. TikTok, Run, and Your Man are probably personal favorites for me on this album, but again, this is another one of those albums where I really think it's strongest when you listen to it from the start to the finish as one cohesive piece. At number 2, we have The Weeknd with After Hours. I mean, this is no surprise. Like, even from the mainstream view, you know that The Weeknd has had a monumental year. His appeal is super widespread with his like synthy, poppy R&B sound, but it's like still deeply emotional and has like a lot of uplifting moments mixed in as well. Speaking on just the album as a whole, it is super well produced. It flows really well together, and like genuinely, unlike a lot of albums, just in general, there's just I don't think there's any duds in this album. It's like every song is really solid. And not that this counts for the scoring of this album, but his music videos are like definitely the best in the industry. They're super interesting to watch. The slow lead up with Alone Again in the beginning of this album to the bombastic chorus of more solemn and melancholy songs like Snow Child, and then this high energy of Blinding Lights to kind of close out the album. This album is so entertaining and it has such a large variety in its sounds, and I could see why so many people love his music and easily why this deserves to be probably the best or one of the best albums of the year. At number 1, we have Gorillaz with Sound Machine. I'm biased because Gorillaz have been my favorite artist group, whatever you want to call them, for a long time. But the thing is, this album truthfully exemplifies why that is. Hopefully from this list, you've seen that I have a decent variety of music, and I get it. Like, everyone's always like, oh, I listen to every kind of music, right? Which usually just boils down to, I don't have a single genre, or I don't really know what I like in music. I'll just listen to whatever's popular. But whether it be from my hobbies, how I've grown up, my different friend groups, my music taste has really evolved, and I like a pretty decent variety of sounds and songs. The point being that Gorillaz really has such a huge variety and array of sounds, from hip-hop, alternative, funk, electronic, lo-fi, punk, pop, R&B, ballads, just everything. It's not for everyone, and the lack of cohesion might not do it for some people, but just the simple experimentation of so many different sounds and genres and just guest stars that are all from different backgrounds. I mean, you have Elton John in one song, and then you'll have, I don't know, JPEG Mafia in another. It's what really makes me love this album. If I had to choose my favorites from the album, I think Momentary Bliss, Aries, Strange Times, and MLS would be my personal favorites. But like, honestly, I love most of these songs, and getting 8 Gorillaz music videos in a single year, that's a blessing. I really suggest giving this year-long Sound Machine project a listen, because even if not every song does it for you, I truly think there's a little bit of something for everyone in here. So that's my top 10 albums of 2020. Let me know what albums you liked in this year. What did I miss? Tell me my taste is trash. Just, help the algorithm contribute a little bit and talk in the comments. And if you're a real one, you drop your Spotify playlist, rewind, and prove to me that you have a better taste or you have some really interesting take on music. As usual, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe if you want. This is the first of a bunch of top 10 2020 videos I'm making, so I know music's not usually what I make on this channel, but I really, music's been an impactful part of my life as it has for so many. And, I'd like to make occasional music songs lists. And I know I'm not the most analytical or knowledgeable on the technicalities of what makes music good, but hopefully you still enjoyed, and see you next time.